Everybody, Nick Dingle here for another VB.NET 2013 GUI programming video. We're going to look at text boxes this time around. We're going to look at the purpose, the properties, the functions, events, and then at the very end I'm going to show you a couple of little tricks which are quite fun and you're probably going to have to use a lot down the road. And in fact, after this video I'm going to make my first mini project video and we're going to use some of those tricks in the next video. But anyway, let's have a look at this guy. Type in text up here. There's our text box. Let's jam him on there. This guy here is exactly how he sounds. What's his purpose? To get text from the user, not to display it, essentially. So what I mean by that is if you want to show some text to the user, you use a label. But if you want to get some text from the user, then you use a text box. Alright, now you'll see by default we can only move this guy, resize him left and right. Okay, later on I'll show you how to resize him up and down. But essentially by default, a text box, you start the program and you can type to your heart's content, really. But let's have a look at the properties to change this bugger. And we're going to start with a very generic property, but pretty important for this guy is the font. Right? If we click on the triple dots for this guy, we're going to have a look at the font dialog, which is actually, if you've ever used an old version of Word, you know exactly what this thing is. But essentially you've got a number of settings here. You've got the font face, you've got the font style and the size, and then a couple of effects that you can enable as well. But bear in mind, in a regular text box, if you select Minion Pro, for instance, then the whole text box will be Minion Pro. If you select bold or semi-bold, whatever it is, then the entire text box is going to be bold. Okay, not just a portion of it, but the entire thing. And same thing with the size. If we select a different size, the whole thing's going to be that. I'm going to select good old Courier New. Why not? No, Comic Sans, go away. Courier New, because it's nerdy and it looks great. So essentially, as I said, I've selected that Courier New in size 10 or 12, whatever it was, and the whole thing's going to be like that. Right? So that there is the font property. The font color, or sorry, the fore color I meant to say, is the color of the text. So right now it's black. I can change it to green. Press play, and we have green text, which looks horrible. I love it. And that's essentially that property. I'm going to set him back to black because I'm hating that. I know that's not the right one. There we go. And as we go down, let's have a look at some properties specific to the text box. For instance, hide selection. So first of all, let's ask ourselves, what is a selection? So if I write something in the text box, and then I click and drag, or I use the shift key or something like that, that is a selection. That highlighted piece of text with inverted colors. Alright, so if I turn that to false, so if I select the text and then I click on something else, you notice the selection is still there. However, if I change that back to true, and highlight that words again, so I'm sorry about wasting your time, people. I click on something else, you notice selection disappears. So that there is the hide selection property. All right, moving along, which another one which is incredibly important, and a lot of people miss this out, is the max length. So right now I can type up to 32,000 characters inside my text box, no more than 32,767. But I can actually change that. Let's say I have a username field that they're going to type in their username, and they have a limit of 32 characters in their username. Well, a lot of people leave that setting at 32,000, and then it causes an error, you get a crash, and then you've got hackers getting into your program and stuff like that. I mean, it's a simple setting. If it's a maximum of 32, type in 32. And then all of a sudden, I can't do anything more than 32 characters. So I'll just, there you go, I've stopped at that letter there. Think about that property when you're using your text boxes. It's really important. To be completely honest, I'm actually going to revert that back to its original value so we can play around with this little guy called multi-line. So right now it's one line and one line only. Okay, if I change this to true, two things happen. First of all, I can resize it up and down. Second of all, my text box will now accept the enter key as a character. So hello world. And I can go down and up as much as I want. Before, the enter key would have done nothing in that. Okay, so multi-line, if you're about to do like a Word text document or you want multi-line or comments or something like that, you're going to need the multi-line setting. All right. Another way to change that setting is actually through this little arrow up here. This is generally for really common settings, and you'll see the text box only got multi-line in there. All right, but anyway, I'm going to leave that on, and we're going to move on to the next one, which is password char. If this is a password box, okay, for instance, I'm just going to copy this box, and we're going to play with this one, and you want the password to be concealed, obviously, for the most part, then what you do is you put in a character which is going to conceal it. So in the olden days, it used to be an asterisk. So if I put an asterisk in there, and then I type anything in the text box, it comes up as asterisks. Now the actual text in the background is still hello world, which is what I typed in, but an asterisk replaces the visual part of it. All right, and that's just one thing that's really important. The next property, which is specific to text boxes, is read only. So read only by default is false. If I set that to true, you'll see it grays it out, and I'm unable to type in it. I can click in it and I can select things, but I'm unable to type a single thing. All right, that's a pretty important property as well. If for whatever reason you do want to lock a text box. All right, now if you're going to use this read-only property, I would consider using a label instead. The only time you would use a text box with read-only on is if you want them to be able to select text and copy it and things like that. So have a good think about what you want to use first. All right, the next property, which is really good with multi-line turned on, is scroll bars. All right, you've got three options: horizontal scroll bars, vertical scroll bars, or both. Okay. Generally, vertical ones are probably the only one to go for. And you'll see if I just mash the enter key, I can now scroll up and down the text box, and everything is handled for me. You don't actually have to put in your own scroll bars. It's built into VB, which is fantastic. All right. Now we're going to go to the generic property of text once again. And before the text for a form is the caption up here, the text before is the text displayed on a button, and so the text for a text box, wow, hello, is what appears in the text box. And the good thing about setting this text property is when I press start, it starts with hello world. So you may or may not have to use that at some point. And to go along with the text, we have a text align property which I've never looked at before, or never dealt with, I should say. So you can align your text to the left, to the far right, or to the dead center. Okay, and that applies again to the whole text box. And there you go. That's pretty much it. So two more that we're going to have a look at quickly. Now let's look at use system password char. Now I'm going to switch back to this text box, and I'm going to get rid of my password char here. Now bear in mind I'm using Windows 8, so if you're using Windows 7, you may get a little bit of a different result. But use system password char. So if I set this to true, instead of using the asterisk, it's going to use the built-in character that Windows has chosen. And for some reason, that's not working. Maybe I have to set something in password char up here as well. Okay, that's just creepy. To be completely honest, I do not know what's going wrong. And if anyone knows, just tell me. Let's see if that works. Okay, it was multi-line. Apologies, everybody. You can't use multi-line and use system password char. And you can see they're not asterisks anymore. They're nice, clean little dots. All right, that's the ones that are built in for Windows 8. Final property, which is pretty cool, is word wrap. All right. So if I type something huge inside this text box, you'll see it wraps down to the next line and keeps going. However, if I turn word wrap off, because I've got the scroll bars turned on, it will actually keep going to the right. All right. But anyway, the properties of a text box are stuffed up a few times in there. But anyway, that's all a learning process for everyone. I thought I had them under control. Let's have a look at the functions. There's a fair few functions for a text box, and a lot of them are really, really good. So let's have a look at, most of our code is going to go under the button, because when I click the button, I want to see it happen in the text box. So let's go to this guy. All right, he's still called button click from the last video if you watched that. And we're going to have a look at Textbox 1's functions. The first one is append text. Now, if you don't know what append means add to, or add to the end of. So if we're going to append some text, it's going to add it onto our text box, which is already there, which is pretty cool. So let's say I want to have hello world added to my text box. So if I hit start, mash my button, whee! You'll notice too that Hello World is sort of jammed up alongside of it, and it's all really one huge line. If I wanted each Hello World to be on a separate line, I'd have to insert a new line. All right, and you can do that by VB new line, and then putting the concatenate symbol after it, okay, or the ampersand, whatever you want to call it. Let's give this another go, and you'll see each one appears on its own individual line. Okay, so the VB new line is like pressing the enter key, but in programming. All right, so that's Append Text. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this guy, and we're going to have a look at the next one, which is pretty useful at times. Textbox1 dot clear. That's it. So you can guess what this one's going to do. I click on it, clears the text box. Doesn't matter how much is in there, it's always going to be empty afterwards. So handy little function to have. Save him as well. All right, the next one's pretty cool, is you can actually do copies. Copies the current selection in the text box to the clipboard. All right. So what I'm going to do for this particular example is I'm going to add two buttons to my form. One's going to be copy, and the other one's going to be paste. So this guy can go over there. I'm going to add another button, like so. So this guy is going to copy, and then this guy is going to paste. Textbox1 dot paste. So there's two functions for you in one hit. So copy the text and then paste the text. So if I play my program, highlight, let's type in something else. Boodles. Highlight this guy, and let's click this for copy, and then go paste. Lots of boodles. Why? Because we can. Alright. And obviously, if we've got a copy function, then we're going to have a cut function. C-U-T. Alright, if you've never used these before, it's similar to copy, however, it deletes the text that you have selected. So, I'll type in poodle. Again, highlight, cut, and then you can paste as many times as you want actually. But it cuts it and then it pastes it. And I'll probably max out that box before the end of the day. Anyway, so they're pretty interesting. I only found out about them today, to be completely honest. I didn't know they were built into them. So very, very handy. All right. So the next one that I'm going to have a look at, and I'm not going to be able to demonstrate it very well for the moment, but I'm going to bring back this append text for the moment, and I'm going to use the second button for this one. So text box. Let's say I add a hell of a lot of text in my text box, and I can't see the bottom of my text box. So obviously you want to scroll down to where the cursor is. Now another word for this cursor that's flashing right here is a caret. And there's a function called scroll to caret. Scrolls the contents of the control to the current caret position. Alright, so if I quickly go up there, let's quickly put a whole lot of stuff in my text box. Let's scroll up. If I click the button, it's going to go right down to the bottom, because that's where the cursor is. So if I scroll back up, jumps back down to where the cursor is sitting. Anyway, I didn't really need to put that in the second button, but I did. Let me just comment that guy out, and that one out as well, because I didn't need him. Alright, the next function we're going to have a look at is called select. Now select actually requires a few parameters to be sent with it. So what are those parameters? We've got start and length. So what this is, if you want to programmatically highlight some words. So hello world is in my text box at the moment. Let's say if I wanted to highlight the word hello, okay, then I would have to start at 0. And how long is the word hello? It's 5 characters. So you start at 0 and go for 5 characters. And hopefully this will work. I've hidden the selection, haven't I? I have. Let's turn on the selection again. Where's hide selection? Go false. Let's see if this will work. There it is. It'll highlight the first 5 characters of my string. And you can do that for the whole string and things like that. Just be careful of not setting the length to longer than what's inside the box. Alright. The next one, if you want to select all of the text, then just use select all. It's as simple as that. Alright, so click on that, selects the whole thing. Done. All right. And then the final function that we're going to have a look at today is called undo, which is quite fun. Undoes, that's undoes the last edit operation in the text box. So let's have a go at that. So it should revert any changes I just made. So if I type in hello, it undoes that. So if I click enter and go poodles and click it, it's going back to hello. But anyway, so that's essentially all the functions that are really handy and specific for the text box. They can all be used in different ways. Okay, and I think the most important thing at the moment now is to have a look at the events for the text box. I'm just going to get rid of these pieces of code, clean it up. And we're going to have a look at, let's double click on this guy, and the first event that comes up is text change. Now you can guess when this one fires off. Anytime anything changes in the text box, if something is pasted in there, if something is added, if something is deleted, whatever, this event fires off. Okay, so it's probably not going to be a really neat message box, but let's go for our message box hello again. Okay, let's click up in here. So the text changed initially. If I type G, it changed, so it fires off. If I backspace, it changed, so it fires off. If I press enter, it changed, so the event fires off. Okay, so that there's a text changed. The next three are very, very, very similar, and I'm going to go up to this box to show you what they are. Okay, these are key down, key press, and key up. Now they're all completely different. Okay, despite them all being incredibly similar, they all fire off at different times. So key down, for instance, is just as you press the key in, as soon as you click it. So let's try this out. As soon as I press one button, I haven't even lifted the key yet, and it's already said hello. All right, let's quickly have a look at key press. Now he's very, very similar to key down, because he fires off as soon as I press the key. But you would notice, I pressed A before, and it appeared. However, this time it's not going to appear until I press OK. Keep that in mind, because we're going to use that before the end of the video. And finally, key up is probably what you've already guessed, is when you release the key. So press A, let go of it, there you go. So, okay, there are your three different ones, key down, key press, and key up. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete all these events, because they're the four that I really wanted to show you. And I'm going to show you now a couple of tricks. Now, let's say, for instance, you only want numbers to be able to put into this box. All right? Let's say you only want them to be able to type in numbers and not stupid little characters like that or words in the middle of it. We can actually add a little bit of code which is going to lock the box down and limit what the user can type in. Now, what we need to do is we're going to use the key press event to see what key they've just pressed, and if it's a bad key, then we're going to ignore it entirely. If it's a good key, we're going to accept it, all right, by default. So what we're actually going to use is this little parameter up here called E, because E, what it does is it's telling us what the user has pressed. And to just emphasize this, let's do a quick message box show. Okay, and let's do E dot, and you get heaps of stuff. Let's go keychar. Click up in here, press G, it tells me I press G. If I press G, if I press backspace, equals, backslash, okay, it tells me every single character that I press, okay, including the enter key and including backspace. That's the backspace key apparently. But anyway, that's just something for another day. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick if statement to see if it's not a digit. If it's not a digit, we're going to completely ignore it. So let's do a quick if statement there. We're going to go if not, okay, because we're checking if it's not a digit. And there's a nice little built-in function, char dot is digit, okay. And then where's the char coming from? Well, it's coming from this parameter, isn't it? E dot keychar. Okay, so what we're doing is we're checking the key that they pressed if it is a digit. Now, if it's a digit, we want to keep it. Okay, but what do we want to avoid? Well, we want to avoid everything that isn't a digit. Okay, so if not a digit, then what we do is you go E dot handled. And if you read this, it says the value indicating whether the event was handled. Okay, so if you say true, it's going to assume that you've done all your work and Visual Basic doesn't have to do anything more. So what that means, I should get rid of that hello world. If I'm pressing keys right now, nothing is happening. But if I press numbers, I can type them in. Problem is, we have now effectively disabled everything that is not a number. So that means the enter key doesn't work, the backspace key doesn't work, and the decimal key doesn't work. So what we should probably do is re-enable some of those keys, including the enter key and the backspace key especially, because they're pretty important. So what we're going to do is we're going to add to this if statement. So if it's not a digit and it's not a control character, okay, and it looks exactly the same. You do e.keychar. So you're passing the keychar to check if it's a control. So what does a control include? Well, actually Control, Alt, Enter, Shift, Backspace, and I think it includes Tab as well. All right. Now I'm not entirely sure if it includes the home, page up, page down, and end keys. I'll have to test that later on, but I've really got to get rid of that. See, I can now backspace. I can't type in letters, but now I can type in numbers, enter keys, but then I still can't type the decimal. All right, there you go. It does include home and end, which is great. So we need to add one more thing, and I'm sorry, people. If we want to include the decimal button, we need one more end statement in this if. So we're going to go and not, and we're actually just going to check the key character equals a dot. Let me hide these. Okay, so if it's not a digit, it's not a control, and it's not a dot, ignore it. Okay, let's press play. Backspace 12.5. One little more issue, and I'm not going to solve it this video. There's a challenge for you people. I can put as many dots as I want. How would you limit it to 1? I'll leave it up to you. But anyway, that's a nice little trick. So filtering out letters, okay, and just keeping the numbers. Sometimes you need to do that. It's quite easy to do just with 3 lines of code, and that's done. So if you want to give that a go, pause the video, because I'm going to continue right now, and we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to try filtering out bad words. Okay, so because I'm going to filter out naughty words, I need my letters back, so I'm going to disable this code. I'm just going to highlight, Control K, C, just comment it out. If you didn't catch that, you hold the Control key, press K, and then press C while you're holding Control, and that'll comment out. If you want to uncomment, Control K and U for uncomment. Anyway, now I'm going to use a different event for this one. We're not going to use a key press. We're going to use text changed. So let's come back down to text changed. All right, and we're going to filter out bad words. All right. First of all, we're going to have to see if the text contains any bad words, and if it does, we replace it with some, let's say, asterisks. I hope that's the right word. If it's not, oh well. So first of all, if the text box, if its text contains a bad word, and I'm just going to use poo for this example because I don't really want to type in a bad word. So if the text box contains a bad word, then we're going to replace it. Okay, so to replace it, we use textbox1, not text, replace. And if you remember the replace function from one of the old videos, you need to pass it the old string and then the new string. So the old string is poo, the new string is going to be star, star, star. Alright, so if I press play, I can type in my text box again because I've taken off the letter limiting. If I type in poo, nothing happened. The problem is, because I'm using the replace function, but replace actually returns a new string, because if you see on the right here, it says replace as a string. So it's returning the new string. Where do I want to put that new string? Well, I want to put it straight back in the text box. All right, so to do that, you put textbox1.text equals our replace. All right, so now when I type in poo, you'll notice that the cursor jumps up. There's a couple of little bugs with this that you can fix with some code, but that's effectively it. So you type in poo and it gets filtered straight out. So 2 bugs that I think you people should go and have a go at fixing. The first bug would be if I type it in capitals. It's not going to do a thing. Or if it's just got one capital in it, it ignores it. And that cursor jumping back to the top left. There's two little things I'm going to set a challenge for you to have a go at, because this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, bye, everybody.